Jorge Brea, CEO of Symphonic Distribution. Happy to be here. Let's do this.
Cool, man. All right. Thank you again for coming on. A lot going on in the world today. Day after the election in the U.S. We don't know where we're going to come out just yet. So there's a lot going on for sure. So again, appreciate making the time, man.
Totally. Yeah. This will be a podcast that could be listened to a few days from now, and we'll see how much different the world is by that time.
Yeah, man. Seriously, it's going to be an intense couple of days, but yeah, man. So kind of on that note, perfect place to start as well. One of the big things that I've wanted to focus on over the last 8 months in particular is just the Black Lives Matter movement, especially within music. It's something that's very important, and I think has picked up steam, lost steam, and one of my goals is to really just kind of help it keep that steady, consistent steam, so that we're always having those conversations. So just starting right there, what have your thoughts been, kind of around the Black Lives Matter movement with everything that's been going on since, things kind of restarted again back in March. And just, you think the changes that we've seen thus far will have a long-term impact? Who do you think has done a really great job and really shown up? And yeah, man. And then lastly, you guys did release a song with Jermaine Dupri, kind of centered around all this sort of stuff. So curious your thoughts on everything there.
Sure. Yeah. So first off, I think the whole movement is important and necessary. Not only is it such a difficult time for this year, but it's been such a difficult time for so many years, right? And the fact that this movement can actually help kind of like shape and change various industries, I think is really, really important. And it's something that's going to be looked at as a hopeful shift in how many people think about things. A lot of the changes that I've seen, I've seen a lot of company statements and just a lot being out there. Our approach, first off, has been to just sort of try to do some change from within, right? So from a business perspective, we've done a lot of annual diversity and inclusion type training, but we did feel like we needed to do more. And just as every company, we've learned a lot through this process and really reflected on what we probably could have done better throughout. So one of the first things that we did was, first off, ensure that we actually have additional, PTO days that are there for reflection. And this kind of is kicking off, for the show must be paused. I thought that was an important day for people to actually sort of reflect and kind of like think about what they can do in the community. So we did add Juneteenth as a paid holiday. We actually added a annual philanthropy day, for every employee to take part and do good in their community. That includes either being poll workers yesterday in the election or just in general, like benefiting any sort of charitable organization or anything of that sort. So we've been doing that. We've started to donate to the Legal Defense and Education Fund on a monthly basis. That we felt is really important. The NAACP is just one of the most reputable kind of organizations that are out there, obviously. So we wanted to really be able to do something that was going to be a kind of like long-term commitment. And then that is kind of like on top of our profits that we put forth on June 2nd as well, to sort of like echo what other companies that we saw were doing as well. Other aspects, we've matched employee donations to charities, and we really just have expanded our diversity and inclusion training, made it mandatory for managers, and opened it up for employees if they want to be able to take part in that as well for reflection. So I think a lot of companies that I talk to are honestly doing a pretty good job to finally make this a big part of their day-to-day and or kind of like month-to-month goals and so forth. I haven't really seen many folks do a bad job, which is a good thing. I think it's probably, I wouldn't know anybody to sort of call out, nor would I want to, because honestly, it's such a very complex thing to deal with. And nowadays, cancel culture is so cancerous and difficult. I definitely wouldn't want to contribute to that. But I think in general, what I see in the business community and even in the music community is that there are steps being made towards improving and towards trying to do better in general. So we're very happy to be able to do that. We're trying to do more recruitment around these areas as well from a diversity and inclusion perspective. And lastly, something that we're very proud of is definitely that release with Jermaine Dupri. It's called Change. It's a song with NEO, Common, and many others. it's benefiting the social change fund. All of our royalties for it are being donated, and every artist actually is donating as well, to their own, out of their own sort of like, royalties and so forth. And the social change fund is really interesting. It's created by philanthropists, entrepreneurs, and NBA superstars like Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade. Supports critical and timely issues that impact the Black community. So for us to be a part of this is very important for us. It was great to be able to work with Jermaine on it, to see the response as well, and to see it be a part of the sort of like Joe Biden related kind of like concert as well was really, really cool as well. So we're thrilled to be a part of that and doing our part. And we'll likely throw in a little bit of extra change, not to use the pun on social change, to be able to help benefit more. So.
That's awesome, man. I think you kind of hit on everything. I think first off, it's about reflection, understanding like, hey, what are we doing? How can we be better? And then secondarily, implementing those things and being like, okay, cool. We actually, had those tough conversations with ourselves and thought that we were doing great here, lacking here. We need to, kind of reshift focus and things like that. And then I think what you guys are doing, just like you said, we're making things national holidays. We're giving people, real paid time off to go out there and do things in the community. I think that's that lasting change. Those are the systemic things that you hope are able to be there in 5, 10 years, 20 years down the line, so that, they become as important to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not an easy thing for businesses to do. I mean, it's interesting, businesses have human resources, but even that now is a bit of a complex thing to deal with when it comes to matters of social importance. Lastly, also social media kind of bypasses all of that. And I mean, it makes it very challenging. So I think every business has to now look at social causes as a part of their mission every single day. And, it's unfortunate that it takes tragedies to do it, but at the very least, if it can wake people up and actually impact real change, then that's the little good that can actually come from something so bad.
Yeah, it's that bittersweet moment that it's like, okay, now we know the changes that need to happen, and let's make sure that we see it through. And it's extremely important, man. And again, kudos to you guys on doing all that stuff. So thanks, man. Thanks for touching on that at the top of the episode as well. And now just kind of jump into a little bit more of your backstory too. So like, I know you're from, the Tampa, Florida area, but where are you originally from? Tell us how you got your start in music and how, you ultimately developed Symphonic.
Yeah, so I was born in the Dominican Republic, so I'm a minority. I moved to Tampa, Florida, in 1992 with my family when we sort of relocated from the Dominican. For many years, I always loved music, but I never really was talented enough to be able to play any instruments. So I started tinkering around with a computer and, started producing beats, using Sony Acid or Sonic Foundry Acid, I think is who owned it at the time. And started just making tunes, and I kind of like immediately fell in love with it. And then my brother got a pair of turntables because he was like partying and enjoying, being a teenager, so to speak. So I would go to the record store with him, and I would pick out records, that I thought looked cool for him to listen to. So I started off just like picking records for my brother, and then I started to just like play with his turntables when he wasn't around, and I broke a few needles as well, which he wasn't too happy about. And then from there, I fell in love with the aspect of music because I found a way of kind of being an artist without having to sort of learn an instrument, and I just didn't have any means to be able to buy it, and my family was obviously quite conservative in terms of spending. So I was trying not to also take advantage of that and so forth. So I started making music. I got decent enough to where I could actually release some of it. And I started working with record labels here around Florida. So I started remixing like all these electronic sort of producers because I was kind of like mainly the background that I really fell in love with from a production standpoint. So I started releasing vinyl. I got a few songs in the radio here in Tampa. And then I started to get the entrepreneurial itch to be able to sort of like have my own record label or kind of control my own destiny as an artist and really form a record label. As you can see from behind me, I'm a huge fan of vinyl records. So I wanted one of those, and I wanted those. And I wanted to be able to sort of like control what music got on there. But then I realized I didn't have any money to be able to do it. And I was still in school, wasn't making much money in my job. So then I thought, well, I see that iTunes is doing its thing, and I remember Napster and totally taking advantage of that as a teenager, like everybody probably did.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe there's a way that I can start selling my music as MP3s. So I started doing that, and then I got my music on Beatport, which was kind of like the start of my career digitally, so to speak. And that did well. I started working with other artists as well. That did well. Then it got to the point where I'm like, well, shit, excuse me, there's definitely opportunity here. So I started working with all those physical record labels that were so kind to me, helping them adapt to digital. And that's kind of how Symphonic was born, kind of like in the very beginning of this whole sort of like digital story. Um, we've been around now since 2006. Excuse me. And we've been able to, kind of expand into all genres, primarily still focused a lot on hip hop, electronic, and Latin as of late being huge, and expanded into other services. And, as a producer, I don't produce as much anymore. I kind of do it now for fun. I don't have to market myself because I'm more dedicated towards marketing the clients that we work with rather than myself. But it's just been a hell of a journey, and one that, we're excited to see continuing for sure.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, that's kind of the perfect segue to the next question too. So, just like you said, you guys have been around since 2006 now, 14 years, operating. Just like you said, very early stages of, kind of the music industry 2.0 or 3.0, depending on when you started. But yeah, what's one of your favorite success stories with an artist that started on the platform really small and then, use the app or just use your services and then, really took off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we were there at the beginning for Dead Mouse. We saw the beginning of Ozuna on the Latin side. On the hip hop side, we saw a little bit of the beginning of Rich Brian as well, who's gone on to do tons of great stuff now. So for us, it's really, we've seen a lot of kind of like success stories. But to tell you the truth, for me, what the cool thing is just kind of recreating that story, just that concept of saying like this is the next person. Like right now in Latin, we're working with this incredible Latin singer and rapper named La Ros Maria, and she's just killing it. Her YouTube channel's blowing up, getting tons of interesting inquiries from competitors, but also from major labels as well, as it always is. But she's a great artist, and being able to honestly just provide a kind of steady, consistent sort of revenue source for a lot of artists and record labels, to me, is the actual success story. Because I know that there's going to be a lot of folks that aren't necessarily household names, but can still do this for a living. Like that to me is supersedes like any individual like kicking butt, so to speak.
Yeah, man. I'm really big into that. This whole kind of idea of a middle class of artists really coming to fruition, I think is very real, and we're only going to see that get more compounded over the next few years, especially. And I think it's going to go even more niche as well. I think it's going to be, people using crypto and blockchain in a real way that helps them retain the value of their art, while also allowing people to kind of invest into their careers, and the whole dynamic of being a fan and a supporter is going to change, and people are going to become more of that, and you're just going to see more of these people that you've never heard, but they're making mid high six figures, low seven figures, and that's amazing. Just like you said, that's awesome that people are able to make a living off of it now. More people are able to make a living off of it.
And I mean, there's a flood of money that's coming into this industry. The industry itself is growing organically at around a 20 to 25% rate year over year. Goldman Sachs, for the financial junkies listening, I mean, that report and the consistent reports that they continue to put out show a really bright future for the industry. I think there's going to be a lot of unpredictability, with a lot of things like blockchain and the DSPs themselves, with their pay rates and so forth. But it's a really interesting and exciting time to be a part of the music industry. It feels like those days of CDs and physical being at the peak of where they were it's not exactly there yet, but it's starting to feel like it will be there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's around the corner, and it's going to be an interesting time. So very cool, very cool. Let's kind of start right at the top here, actually, or I should say, let's backtrack just a little bit for those that don't know. Do you mind just explaining a little bit about what Symphonic is and how you guys help artists?
Sure. So the core business is digital distribution, but then there's many sort of branches outside of that. So while we distribute your music to a bunch of services, we're talking about services that then will be not just streaming providers, but then user generated content providers. So we're working with the likes of TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, sort of like the new experiential streaming, as I like to call it, since that really involves a lot of the interaction and a different way of music consumption, right? So we're working with a lot of those, but then we're also providing, tech-enabled solutions as well. So we have a platform that enables you to easily manage your catalog, easily get sort of like financials and analytics in terms of your performance, and continuing to enhance that, which is always a challenge, of course. But then also even manage kind of how you deal with other artists, like split payments and things of that nature. We also then offer marketing related solutions. And that's the biggest challenge of every distributor and every company like us right now, is being able to get closer to being able to say that we can promise you marketing success. Every distributor can say that they promise marketing, but the actual results are really difficult. And that's the one problem that we're trying to solve by, boosting up our third-party playlist network relationships, working closer with DSPs, and having key areas of the world that we can focus on based on our catalog. But to kind of briefly answer it, if you make music, we'll put your music on Spotify, Apple Music, and a number of other areas. But distributors now have become sort of like record labels of the past, where we're kind of looking at top to bottom, all these different solutions and services that you may need.
Got it. Got it. And, from your standpoint, you've been working with a lot of artists. You guys yourselves have gone through a number of changes. I'm sure making different mistakes along the way, but what do you see one of the, what's one of the biggest mistakes that artists tend to make when registering their songs with the distributor?
Yeah, I mean, in general, when you go to conferences, if you go when there were conferences,
Yeah.
um, South by Southwest or others, there's always panels around metadata, and that's a very big aspect of things. So, like, the biggest thing that an artist should do is first off to be as organized as possible and ensure that they understand the metadata inputs that they're putting in. A lot of folks don't know this, but we as a distributor and many other distributors are really graded upon the quality of our distributed releases. And that's not just like the audio quality, it's more of the actual metadata itself. So like how we have labeled the artist names or the track names or the release names, things of that nature. Those are very huge, and any misspelling there can actually result in revenue loss outside of distribution. So that's definitely the most common area that we see. It's one of the most challenging ones for any regular artist to be able to really get correctly, because of the fact that there isn't a lot of education out there on the importance of it. So that's one of the things that we try to do, is try to prevent that. The other thing is, internationally, copyright laws and trademark laws are a little bit different and difficult to kind of comprehend to the US. So what we start to see is a lot of, illegal sampling. The more that it is easier to make music, and it is becoming easier and easier to make music, the easier it is for sampling to just kind of like become so common, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another big thing, that there's a lot of producers, particularly in the electronic, certainly around the hip hop, and even at times in the Latin side, sort of like those genres that constantly produce computer oriented music. The sampling that occurs is a big challenge and mistake that I see. And it may not become an immediate problem, but ends up being a big one if the song actually grows to be huge, as we've seen with many stories. So those sampling in general has been an issue for many years, but I think it could only get worse with the fact that technology is making it easier to make music, and younger folks aren't really thinking about some of the copyright related issues about it. There's other definite challenges, but I'll say one last one. providing your release with not enough lead time and expecting marketing results is definitely kind of like a misconception and a mistake at the same time. Prepping a release schedule, sending something out, having lead time, submitting marketing drivers, and also having a very humble kind of expectation, I think is a recommendation I would always give to any artist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every single one of those things, those are the basics. Everything that you just said are just the basics. And if hopefully, people are listening to this and we continue, that's one of the reasons I want to do stuff like this, is to put that basic information out there. That's like, hey, artists, like from day one, make sure that you set up, just like you're scheduling studio time and you set it out in advance, set out your releases in advance. You can't drop it tomorrow. You can do that, but also have a realistic expectation of like what that song is actually going to do if you drop it immediately, right? You got to understand where you are in the pecking order. And that comes back to dealing with the issue of technology, making everything so readily available. The issue in music now is, how do you stand out amongst the noise? And that is because so many more people are making music. 30, 40 years ago, it was extremely hard to make music because it was expensive. So the barrier to entry was way up here. And if you made it up there, you kind of had a relatively straightforward path. It was like, hey, get it to an A&R at a record label. Yep. You make 3 or 4 songs and boom, that's all you got to do. And then if they like it, they say great, and they buy it. And then you're off to the races from there. And then there's 3 or 4 TV stations, 3 or 4 radio stations that you need to be on, and then things go. Now there's a niche for every single thing. And because of that, you need to, give yourself enough lead time to set yourself up for success so that you can pick and choose your spots and then build on that over time. It's a long game.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a whole episode of many mistakes that we've even made.
Yeah.
Everyone will make them. That's how you get better. In the defense of artists, there's so many different things to think about nowadays. The DIY space can be very challenging. Having a management can be challenging. So it's understandable to make these mistakes. And these are certainly things that no one should fret about, but should just strive to do better with, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's well said too. There are a lot of challenges. What we're aiming to do here is just, level set things to say, hey, these are the different things that you are going to face. These are the different things that you need to think about to really kind of understand if this is something that you want to put your time, effort, and energy into the long haul. And so I think it's important to have those conversations out. We're not saying you can't do it. We're just saying this is these are the obstacles. And so plan accordingly. That's all we're saying.
100%.
Yeah, man. So let me ask you this too. You mentioned obviously there's a number of distributors out there. What do you think separates you apart from, CD Baby, DistroKid, United Masters, and other people that are in the space?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, we look at those distributors as kind of a great beginning for the music journey. Typically they are more DIY focused. And we call those sort of like DIY companies because they will work with a lot of artists and so forth as well. They will typically have fees and give 100% of royalties, which always sounds really attractive. However, the way that we're different is, first off, we're selective, which allows us to be a bit more personal with the clients. That's what we definitely aim to do. Not an easy thing, but what we aim to do. And secondly, like, we believe that we actually have a little bit more flexibility within our platforms. With the likes of, DistroKid, for example, you have to upgrade to be able to get certain features. So $19.99 a year will actually end up being a little bit more if you're, for example, a record label. With us, you have a limited artist, you have the choice of where you want to select, DSPs, when you want it to come out, etc. United Masters is definitely doing a great job in terms of like the hip hop aspect of things and some really key and unique relationships. But I think the biggest difference is we are first off selective. And while we may charge a percentage, we earn our percentage through the marketing consultation and the education that we aim to put out. The stuff that we put out on our blog is very unique and original. It's aimed at such an audience where it is DIY all the way up to someone that's experienced. So we're very proud of that. Even aspects of our knowledge base, we've got tax resources and things that, we believe are important for the international community as well as the domestic community. So the big thing is being selective has enabled us to be more closer with folks. So that's not to say that we won't work with anyone from those companies. Absolutely not. I think they're great. And when someone's looking to kind of like get a team to kind of like back them up, so to speak, that's where we're really interested, which is why we have more of an apply rather than sign up model in that regard. So it really is based on the choice. And then the last thing I'll say is, we are able to work with record labels, managers, and artists. And our platform is nimble and flexible enough to where, you can set up unique user profiles from within your account, so that if you wanted somebody to just be your content team, you could do that. If you wanted someone to just be your accounting team, you can do that and limit those views. So that's one thing that's, free. There's no cost to that. We certainly have artist splits, something that some of these companies do have, but others are still not yet adapting to. And in general, really just trying to provide the marketing support, which is difficult for some of them to do because they're getting fees and kind of they're more software oriented rather than kind of like development of the material. Some of them will have their plus programs and so forth as well, which they'll do similar of that. And I think in general, it's really telling it's an artist or a label or someone asking themselves, what company is right for me? If those are right for you, then that's totally fine. And we'll be looking and excited and being fans of the music that's being distributed as well. So.
Yeah, well said. And I think to your point, the services that you guys do offer, that's the next level up, right? Like step one is just being able to get your music everywhere, right? And then as you progress in your career, you start to understand in order to be an artist, you got to put in the time, effort, and energy to be an artist, and you need to focus on that craft, and you do need a team. So it's like, hey, where can I go? And again, I think the fact that you guys have that out there and the selection process is there, that allows you to kind of really earn your percentage.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm big on, hey, you want to charge a percentage, fine. Just show me how you're going to earn it. And if that is there, then great. Then if this makes sense for me, then let's move forward. So the fact that you guys are saying that from jump is like, it's
Totally.
amazing.
And I think, earning it too is there's different ways of how that can be done. I
Mm,
mean, we've gone down a path of trying to make our platform a little bit more nimble for people to have the choice. So we actually could even work with folks that are with DistroKid or CD Baby because, for example, Beatport and BeatSource are not necessarily such active partners with them, but we have great relationships with. So there's creative type solutions. We have sync licensing where if you're doing DistroKid, you can work with us for that. There's many different ways. So that's like being super flexible, I think, is what's cool because for us, we really believe a relationship is really the most important thing at the end of the day. And, we strive to be perfect, but we're not going to be, and none of those companies will be. No one can be. But I think, we become that way from what type of client we work with and how they can help shape us as well.
well said, man. Well said. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, going a little bit more on the artist side, given that that's kind of how you started as a producer and an artist. But given your background now, all the services that you guys offer and what you see different artists doing, I want to talk about the pandemic for a second too. How do you think artists should be adding value to their fans' lives during this period, right? Because typically, the traditional model is record, tour, drop merch, and that cycle just goes on and on and on and on. But the pandemic has upended things, and artists need to be thinking about, again, how can I stand out amongst the noise? And for me, I think it goes back to like, what sort of relationship do you have with your fans? And I think it's important to talk about that now because of the internet. Everyone's like, you talk to a novice, you talk to your grandparents, and they're like, what do you do? You're like, oh, I'm an artist. They're like, don't you just put it up on you? Why don't you just put it on YouTube and then you're famous? And it's like, that's not how it works. Okay. There's so many other things going on. And I think a lot of the younger generation, because you are young and you're just getting started out, you see those people that have that viral success as, that marker of success when like, in fact, that is not the rule. That is the exception to the rule. So it really comes back to, hey, if you want to build a long-term sustainable business in any business, in any vertical, you need to have a great relationship with your fans. And a lot of up-and-comers don't necessarily think that way. So, I want to ask you this question. I know it's a long-winded question, but I kind of want to set the scene so that people that are listening understand that, like, okay, I need to be starting with like the one-to-one fan relationship first and just super serve my fan, because when it comes time, they will reciprocate in kind. So yeah, just kind of curious your thoughts on how you think artists can be adding value to their fans' lives.
So I think, one of the answers for this that I've thought about was really content itself, and content stretches across different ways. So first off, this is a great time because you're not able to tour, that you can start to build up your catalog. And I think this is where you can start to network a lot with different genres or artists from different locations. What I've always told artists is to be very consistent in terms of your release schedule. But now, especially, that can really be done. And it can be done in a different way. Everyone's always trying to climb like their Spotify monthly listeners. You can do that not just by playlists, but by putting out really quality and important music, with you maybe connecting with an artist from Africa or an artist from South America that maybe has a bit more of monthly listeners than you may. So that way you can enable yourself to be found in their audience. That starts to create new fans and new fan engagement. So I think collaborations are a huge must nowadays. I think, building up a catalog is key. I love albums, but this is a singles and EP culture. And the good thing about that is, if you take an album of 10 tracks and you split it up into, let's say, a couple tracks out of that, then you've got a whole year's worth and then some of a release schedule. So you can actually build a plan around that. And content, there's a lot of criticism from, Daniel Ek at Spotify in terms of the fact that he's saying that artists should distribute more. I think that is very blunt and straight up. What he really should be saying is, artists should be building up a catalog, because of the fact that it's a house and it's going to be kind of like a journey, and the attention spans are super, super short nowadays. So like the way that he's looking at Spotify, I would think, is similar to how a social media platform is. A song is like a status, right? Or a photo. So that's why I think their mindset is just put out as much content. And I'm of the view of a little bit more volume, but I believe of more quality and volume at the same time. So I think if someone focuses on consistency, collaborations, and then further, figure out what it is that you're looking to do from a social perspective, content-wise, is key. So like, if you're looking to be kind of someone that's entertaining, then you need to focus on just doing entertaining content, whether that is memes, getting yourself on TikTok. Like, showing who you are nowadays is super important for fan engagement, because that's how people are going to connect. And, artists don't just need to be making music. They actually need to be thinking about entertainment, if that is the area that they're looking to focus on. If they're more kind of like, quality driven artists, let's say like Tom York, Radiohead, or, even Kendrick, and they want to be a little bit more serious, then you can put out more statement like content or more artistic content. The point being is, consistency is key, and entertaining people in whichever way, whether it's funny or serious, is key, as well as releasing content consistently, working with collaborators. Those are some things that I've told a lot of folks. And I haven't even mentioned live streaming, but that's certainly an avenue. I just feel like with live streaming, just playing music doesn't necessarily get something. Maybe, do a live stream of you making the song, or do a live stream of you just hanging around watching, maybe a gaming or some sort of like different area that kind of engages people, I think is really the thing. So.
Yeah, well said. I think it's the content is the biggest thing, and the other thing too, that I've thought about over a long time. Worked with a number of artists, worked with artists that wanted to be a little bit more recluse, and unfortunately, that doesn't work in today's day and age if you are trying to be at the highest level of the music business, right? Because of the way, excuse me, not to say that it can't exist, it's just fewer and far between for those people that actually succeed because of the amount of content that's out there and other people doing your thing. So, even, and this is like very new, this is in the last 2 or 3 years that I've kind of shifted my own thought process on this, because you do look at somebody like Kendrick and you're like, oh my God, he's amazing and it's super important. But like, he came out at a different time. And even when he does come out, his run is for like a year and a half or 2 years. It's like the album, all the other videos, all the other features, the tour, the merch, the other videos, the award show. So, it's still mapped out. And I think that's what up and comers should be like drawing from. It's like, okay, there's content. I need to better map this out. And I also think too, just like you said, just you got to put out as much content that kind of surrounds your other interests. What are you talking about in your music? Okay, that's what you should be making content about. Are you a gamer? Okay, great. Hop on Twitch, figure out other ways to create content. And then I think ultimately, just like any other business, you're like, hey, how am I adding value to the fan? That's when I think you can start to create unique merch ideas as well, which has more value than a stream. And if you have a great email list of people and a great follower list, those people again will reciprocate in kind by buying your stuff. But you got to put in that work. You got to create the content. You have to show value first.
100%. And I mean, to get to a Kendrick, it took Kendrick a long time for it. It takes a lot of us a long time. So I agree about being reclusive now is much more difficult because there's so much access to stuff. And I think it's important to just be patient. And the last thing I'll say is that, artists need to really be patient and humble, because like this doesn't happen overnight. We as a distributor never guarantee success. And I refuse to. I can't stand it when I hear other distributors saying that we're going to do this for you. That is just utter BS, because no one can really promise that, because it costs money to do that. You know what I mean? Like if someone expects a distributor to do it for only percentage, like we're going to contribute to it. And we know that we can actually market to DSPs. Like that's for sure a given with percentage. But when it comes to PR or, advertising, there's budgets that have to be there. And, an artist, it's difficult for us to just do it for a new artist, right? We have to do it for one where we feel like an investment can be recouped. And that is something that an artist should really know, that there is a time for when that comes. And in between, you can do a lot on your own with collaboration, and just putting your head down. Like our business hasn't happened just because it happened. Like it took a long time. And many careers, are like that as well.
And that's what you want, because that's going to build the foundation for you to succeed or press on through those dry times, because everyone has it. No matter what, you're going to have a dry couple of weeks or months or a year or two. But if you have that foundation, that like, okay, this is our North Star. We've built up this thing, and now we're just continuing to figure it out. That's all anyone is ever doing. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. No matter what business, at what level, that is just happening, in one form or another. So,
beautiful, man. About music and technology in a way.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, hey, we're coming down to time here. I want to spend the last couple of minutes just, I like to use this time to let you do your plug thing. So yeah, what are you working on that you're super excited about? Where can people contact you? And then lastly, what would the name of your personal playlist be?
All right, cool. I love this question. So we're excited actually. In the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a virtual, sort of like conference as well. It's called Virtual Music Industry Sessions. We added the virtual. You can get info at misessions.com. Even if you don't attend live, all these will be recorded. A lot of awesome panels. We love to educate. Educating for us has been something that we've done since day one. So that's something that we're definitely working on. We've got a lot of really cool partnerships that we're going to be announcing soon, as far as like new DSPs, new service offerings. We're getting a lot more focused on kind of like different niche areas, like working with influencers, third-party place listers, and so forth. And we recently launched a kind of like sub-brand called Symphonic for Production, which is really me kind of like wanting to focus a lot on the producer because that's still in my blood there, and distributing sample packs and selling sample packs, but also connecting with partners around that area as well. So those are definitely some of the daily things that are going on. Tons of tech development like crazy, and into next year, we're going to see a lot more in analytics as well, and just a lot of cool stuff to come. And if anybody's ever interested in knowing, I'm pretty easily accessible on Instagram at SYM Jorge, Sim Jorge, or Twitter, Jorge E. Brea. Of course, Symphonic. We have our blog. We have all of our socials. Symphonic posts much cooler, consistent stuff than I do. And I think that is what every listener should want. They should expect me working behind the scenes. And, you can see a lot of what Symphonic's doing that way. And as far as the playlist, so it's funny, I actually do have a playlist that I've created internally, of course, and it's got the lamest name ever. It's called Jorge's Playlist. But in it, there's literally a mix of everything. I mean, I've got jazz, I've got, metal, I've got chill. I listen to a lot more chill out music and stuff like that nowadays. But yeah, it's a smorgasbord, as I like to say.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, I love asking that question. That's my Jesus and Mero question. Yeah, I love to hear what people say.
I thought about creating sub playlists and organizing it, but that might be over the holiday break when things are more chill.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Again, thank you so much for the time, man. Appreciate it. Glad to hear it. Things are going well. Excited about the upcoming conference. I'm definitely going to be checking for those things as well. And yeah, man, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll have to do a round two in the future.
I'd love to. Thank you very much for what you're doing. This has been a blast. The fact that you're doing this is super important. So for all your listeners, give kudos to this gentleman. He's doing a great job. So thank you for having me on.
Man, appreciate it. Okay. All right. We'll definitely talk soon, man.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, man. You too. Peace.
Bye-bye.